Hello, everyone. I welcome you to another session of the Malgudi Group. And we are together again to talk about the poetry of Arun Kolatkar. Specifically, we will be talking about his collection of poetry titled Jejuri. Before we go into the discussion, however, I must wish the members of the Malgudi Group, the best, because we have remained together for a year. Malgudi Group has completed a year. Meanwhile, we began the first session on 15th of August in 2023 with the discussion of Tomb of Sand. And now we have completed a year. So I must congratulate all the members of this group for being together, for reading, for continuing with the discussions. Now, coming back to Arun Kolatkar's poetry. Before talking about the poems in this collection, I have to talk about the folk god Khandoba. Because Jejuri is a place of pilgrimage where the god Khandoba is worshipped. Khandoba in Maharashtra is a deity whom all people worship, irrespective of the castes they belong to, even Muslims. And he is known as Mailara in Karnataka and Malana in Andhra Pradesh. In the songs or poetry that we find in all these three states, there are stories about Khandoba and how Khandoba is actually an incarnation of Lord Shiva, who came to this earth to get rid of two terrible demons, Mallasura and Manikasura. So there are stories in the folk traditions related to these fights that Khandoba had with the two demons and how he protected the world by killing them, defeating them. And then after that, Khandoba stayed on in this earth in the form of Swayambhu Linga, or self-emerging stone god. And it is fascinating, whenever you start reading the poems in this collection, you have the urge to find out everything, that you don't know. And there are so many things which you don't know. And this is what you realize as you start reading the poems. So it is also a study in folklore whenever you embark on this journey of reading the poems in Jejuri. Now, the god's character is primarily pastoral, and it is also interesting how the stories also talk about his marriages. Two marriages mainly. The first marriage to Malsa, that is the name of his first wife, who is believed to be another form of Parvati. And Malsa is believed to be the daughter of a rich merchant. So in that sense, she comes from, a very good family. She is highborn in that sense. And the other wife of Khandoba, named Banai, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the names correctly. She belongs to the shepherd class. She's a shepherdess. And this shows how there is inclusivity in the whole concept behind Khandoba, the stories related to Khandoba in Maharashtra. And to understand the poetry, we must also know about the Vagyas and Murlis. Vagyas are actually male devotees who have been offered to Khandoba by their parents since early childhood. And Murlis are young girls who are offered by their parents to Khandoba. This tradition of offering one of their children to Khandoba is, of course, in one sense, an act of piety, but there is also the urge to, lessen the burden of bringing up children. There is also that aspect because of which many poor families, they take this step. I mean, there is piety, but there is also the need to bring up one child less. And that is why they offer one of their children to Khandoba deity. And it is an elaborate process. If you, want to read about how these offerings of children are done, that is a very elaborate process. The Vakya is smeared in turmeric, and turmeric is actually associated with Jejuri because whenever you go to that place, you will only see turmeric all around. So turmeric is something that you associate with the deity, and whenever Vagya has to become or has to become a disciple of the Lord or has to be offered to the Lord, the turmeric will be part of the initiation ceremony, as we can call it. Similarly for Murlis, and these girls are believed to be married to Khandoba, and that is why their head is also shaved off after this particular ritual is done, because throughout their lives they will lead a divine life and a religious life, and to show their devotion and surrender before Khandoba. This is part of the ritual. And it is also important to know that Vakyas and Muralis, they are often asked to perform whenever there are weddings or there is the yatra of the annual yatra of Khandoba. They are asked to perform, and they earn their living in that way. Now, apart from these points, it is also important to know that there is, just in the premises of the Khandoba temple, there is a large brass tortoise that is 20 feet in diameter. And that tortoise is used as a stage for performances and discourses. And the tortoise figures in a prominent way in two of his poems that I have read, that I remember from his collection. So these are little bits of things that we must know if we want to put things in perspective when we are reading the poetry of Arun Kolatkar, the poems in Jejuri. Also, there is another poem which talks about the horseshoe shrine. And there is an interesting story in some of the legends. Khandoba is actually portrayed as riding a horse, and along with him, his two wives are seated on the horse, and they have swords and spears. That means together they are, part of a battle or a fight. And this is how Khandoba is pictured. And there is actually a place there which has the imprints of horseshoe on a particular stone, and that is believed to be the horseshoe shrine. So it was really interesting for me, to explore these ideas when I started reading the first poem. It was almost like a call for me. The first poem, titled The Bus. The tarpaulin flaps are buttoned down on the windows of the state transport bus all the way up to Jejuri. These lines were almost like a call for me, a call to understand things about Jejuri, to try to find out things about Jejuri, and to go on a pilgrimage, on a metaphorical pilgrimage to Jejuri, a pilgrimage through words, because that is what Arun Kolatkar's poem in this collection do. They take you on a pilgrimage and you ask different questions about spirituality, about yourself, your life, and about the lives that you see around you while you read these poems. Let me begin with the first poem, The Bus. The bus that takes a pilgrim to the holy place of Jejuri. These lines are important for me when the person in the bus tries to look out of the window, trying to discern the countryside in the feeble morning light. It is not yet, daybreak. It is not yet daybreak. But what he sees instead of the countryside, that is where we begin our journey as well. Your own divided face in a pair of glasses on an old man's nose is all the countryside you get to see. So maybe another traveler is there beside him, an old man, and the reflection on the old man's spectacles, the reflection of this person, show him a divided face. And this word divided has a significance in the poetry of Kolatkar, because here we are talking about contradictions that we find within ourselves, and these contradictions, they lead us to questions that must find an answer, but whether those answers satisfy the questions is another matter. But still, they take us on quests, and those quests are important if we want to understand ourselves better. Another important point in this particular poem are those lines which go like this. You seem to move continually forward towards a destination just beyond the caste mark between his eyebrows. So the old man has a caste mark on his forehead, but the pilgrim's destination is beyond that caste mark. And this is where we associate, that something beyond the caste is there in the divinity surrounding Khandoba. Usually he is referred to as a Shudra deity in different terminologies that are used. He is also called a Shudra deity, and that is the pride of Khandoba. not being associated with Shiva in the sense that Shiva is spoken of, but more like a folk deity, a pastoral deity who revels in the pastoral idea. Now, I would like to shift to the next poem, The Priest. Again, the bus figures in a prominent way in this poem. But while in the earlier poem, the bus took someone to Jejuri, where the person got off, here in this poem, the priest is waiting for the bus to take him for worship, to a place for worship. But the way the poem progresses, we understand that it is, of course, a comment on, the superficiality that we see in the rituals, that we see in the garbs which are believed to be sacred. But that is also a study which goes beneath that garb and studies the priest in question who is waiting for a bus, but actually is thinking of the puran poli, the sweet dish that might be there on his plate as an offering. I am intrigued by 3 lines in this particular poem, The Priest. While he's waiting for the bus and wondering about the sweet dish that he might get, he is also chewing betel. And these 3 lines go like this: the bit of betel nut turning over and over on his tongue is a mantra. It is interesting that his chewing of betel nut is equated with a mantra. And this actually made me think of a phenomenon called synesthesia, which I had read about some days before. But while reading these lines, that concept came to mind. Synesthesia is actually a phenomenon in which stimulation of one sensory pathway leads to involuntary experiences in a second sensory pathway, in another sense. So if we are reading this and in our mind's eye, we actually see the priest chewing the betel nut. So just it is a matter of sight for us. In our inner eye, we see that person chewing betel nut, turning the betel over and over on his tongue between his teeth. And that sight actually makes us hear a mantra. I mean, that sight is associated with the sound of a mantra. And if we look at it from the perspective of the priest in question, then it is a matter of taste for him. So it is a mantra. So it is a matter of taste for him. He's tasting the betel nut, but it is again a mantra that maybe is, there in his ears as well. While chewing the betel nut, he's almost chanting a mantra. And it is said that as an effect of that mantra, the bus came along and then, his wait was over. So these are the lines which were really interesting for me. And also interesting is the way the poem ends. The bus goes round in a circle, stops inside the bus station, and stands purring softly in front of the priest, a cat grin on its face and a live, ready-to-eat pilgrim held between its teeth. So here maybe there is the possibility that, the priest will get on the bus and maybe find a pilgrim whom he can enchant with his words, and someone, a ready to eat pilgrim. That means it also hints at um, these priests who are mediators between the common people, the pilgrims, and between these people and Khandoba, the mediators. And there is also this web cast by the mediators that is kind of portrayed in the way the poem ends. The bus is also a part of this mediation between the Bhakta and Khandoba. So again, it is, the journey has begun, and we are already in this place, and we are getting a taste of it through Kolatkar's words. Now, again, another interesting poem is Heart of Ruin, the third poem, where a particular temple in ruins is the topic, and it is a temple of Maruti or Hanuman. And the beam, the roof beam has come down, it has fallen, and it is almost on Maruti's head. But what is interesting is that the ruined temple is home to a mongrel bitch and her puppies. And the safety that they experience in that place of ruin is the same as the safety that devotees yearn for when they visit a fine temple, a temple that is intact, a temple that is glorious. And also that ruined temple provides protection to the dung beetle, the little creature, the dung beetle, who seeks shelter under the broken collection box. So the collection box where money maybe was supposed to be collected as an offering to Maruti, it is broken because of the crushing weight of the roof beam. That is what the poem says. But it provides a corner of safety for the dung beetle. Which is why a temple in ruins is equally a house of God as a grand temple. That is the spirit of this particular poem. And then there is the poem titled The Door, which is a beautiful poem, I feel, where a door that is dangling, a door that, is detached from its frame, partly because one hinge has come off, is equated with a prophet just partly brought down from the cross. So we know the connotations. A dangling martyr, that is what the poem says. And what I find interesting in this poem, if we read the poem in silence, it has an effect on us. And unless we read it completely, we won't have that sense of connection. I mean, each and every line, they add something to the texture of the poem. But of course, I just want to focus on what touched me the most. This leaning door, or this door that has come off partly, is equated with a local drunk. That is one comparison. The other comparison is a kind of picture of a man of muscles that has been cut from an anatomy book. Once that picture is cut, it is very difficult for the picture to belong to the original book. So in the sense, once that door has come off from the original frame, it is very difficult to go back to the first state which it was in. And then these lines: hell with the hinge and damned the jam, the door would have walked out long ago. That means that even the door does not care to be in that structure. The door would have walked out long ago. That means, if we associate the door with the prophet and the prophet with spirituality. So if people in a place do not honor spirituality, do not try to understand spirituality in the true sense of its term, then spirituality would also like to leave that place, would also like to leave that person. But there is something still which has kept the door from leaving, which is what? The door would have walked out long, long ago if it weren't for that pair of shorts left to dry upon its shoulders. Just as a ruined temple has value for the dogs who find shelter there or the beetle, similarly, the door finds value in the fact that someone has hung his shorts there. Maybe, a person who was working and needed something to dry his shorts. But we also have to look at this expression long, long ago, which would mean that at a time when it seemed, that people didn't care for spirituality at all, at least someone held on to faith, because, we can also associate this action to an act of faith. So someone held on to that faith, and to honor that faith, the door or the prophet or spirituality is still there. It has not left the scene or the place. So I would like to take a break here and invite Dr. Anuradha Mishra. I would love to hear what she has to say about these poems, but I would like her to come in at this point. We could go on and on, but then let me stop and take a pause here. Yes, Dr. Anu.
Yes, thank you, madam, for this wonderful insight. I liked listening from you because I have read it from a different perspective when I read it, and I had never been able to dissociate Arun Kolatkar from his poems. But when you read it, I find that it's like a new criticism. You are reading the poem independently. But when you read these poems, you find that there is a conflict from the beginning to the end, a conflict between a believer and a non-believer. There is a sarcasm from the very beginning of the poem. In the poem, the verse when he, in the last line, he says that you don't step inside the old man's head. In the previous line, he has already talked about the mark between the brows. But he says that you cannot know what is inside his head. You can just see the mark. The marks that represent his faithfulness, that he is a devotee, and yet the conflict remains. And the reason is that the whole life of Arun Kolatkar has been he is living dual life. He was a poet and a painter. He was writing in two languages, in Marathi and in English, and all his poems are translated. Some from English to Marathi, some from Marathi to English. And that too, he was writing at a point of time when the in in Maharashtra, the regionalism and the nationalistic feelings of being a Marathi was very high. So someone writing in English was not that easily accepted. And that is why he started translating them into Marathi just to prove his point that I can write in both. So that was a very crucial time. In fact, there is a poem about his writing, about his bilingual writing. And I think it is his there is an English thinker and Marathi men both reside in him, and thus came out Jejuri. Though he went there, he could never see Jejuri as a devotee. There is always that eye of a critical eye to look at everything, to inspect everything from the view of a secular mind or a non-believer that remains throughout the poem. There is a poem where he says that I have a pen in my possession which writes in two languages and draws in one. My pencil is sharpened at both ends. I use one end to write in Marathi, the other in English. What I write with one end comes out as English. What I write with the other comes out as Marathi. So, and his first book came in English, that is Jejuri, for which he won the Commonwealth Prize, of course, Commonwealth Poetry Prize. And uh, in this heart of ruin, the priest, as you say, talks about the priest, but there are certain things very subtly. He put things there. In the priest, he writes that to look at the long road winding out of sight with the eventlessness of the fortune line on a dead man's palm. He questions. He put these questions very subtly inside all of his poems that you read. In Heart of Ruin also you will find that uh, uh, he feels that the temples are because they are now at ruin, they have been ruined, and he says that they are better this way. The repetition of the line that this way time and again, it shows that when they were often visited by people, they were not humanitarian, they did not accommodate the perihadox. But once, now that they are depeopled, now God stays there. The Maruti, the dogs, the creations of God. Now it has become a home to the God. And that's what you also find in the door when he says that apart from the pair of trousers, a pair of shorts left to dry upon his shoulders. A pair of shorts may refer to a homeless person who do not have a home, and he has made that place a home. So, in a way, he is representing a reverse picture of what piety is. When you read the whole collection of Jejuri, you will find that he is questioning the orthodox rituals which are performed in the name of piety, and the whole concept of human beings loving each other, respecting each other, we caring for the other species, that has gone. And he says that without these things, all this sense of piety, worshipping, everything is just as worthless. And you talk till door. There is another poem, Chaitanya, just after door. He says that, come up it, said Chaitanya to a stone in stone language. Wipe the red paint off your face. I don't think the color suits you. I mean, what's wrong with being just a plain stone? I'll still bring you flowers. You like the flowers of Jendu, don't you? I like them too. So in this poem, he is almost telling the god that you don't need to have this red paint to become a god. I will bring the flowers just because you like it. You don't have to play god there. So I think that's what Arun Kolatkar tries to do in all his poems. breaking down the way of thinking, the popular way of thinking. And since Jejuri and Khandoba are, they are, like you said, Maharashtrian god. Uh, Khandoba is very much, what should I say? Uh, it very much deep rooted into the lives of Maharashtrians. So anyone who is living there cannot remain untouched by it. So that's why I think he brought that one through which he can communicate with the people who are living in Maharashtra, and with whom the poem will be very much accepted like a part of their life. And the interesting thing is that he first wrote it in English, then he translated it into Marathi later on. So that's it. Whatever, I mean, since you were talking and I am talking, and I think that instead of taking the whole of Jejuri at one point of time, since we talk about 5 poems, I think all those two people who are there, they should also add something since they have listened to it, and keeping this very short will also help whoever will listen to this to have an insight to to those points that we have discussed instead of discussing the whole lot of it. Then we can go on with other poems, because each and every poem in this collection is like a flower in a garland. You cannot just take it out and understand it. The whole poem makes sense. So
That's true. That's true, Anuradha ma'am. And it was very interesting. And you're right. Whenever we read poetry, we will see something in it, and someone else will see something else in a particular poem.
yes, yes,
And
yes,
that
yes.
is the purpose of this discussion, because we want to put in, whatever struck us, we want to put it on the table so that all might
Yeah.
have, that the sight of so many readings.
And a
And that is
new ideas will come up once you start talking about something. You and me must have missed something that other
something.
two have spotted on in the poem, or while we are discussing also. Interestingly, when we were discussing door, when you said that it seems that someone was there,
Hmm.
I remembered one poem by Imtiaz Dharkar, Postcards from God. It's just one line poem. Its title is Postcards from God, and the poem is proof that I was there. It's like God sending postcards from Earth, that once I was there, and now I do not inhabit that place anymore. It's like that. Arun Kolatkar's God is also like that. He was there once. Now he is no more.
True, true.
Yeah.
So let me invite Pragya to take up the discussion from here. Yes, Pragya?
He's just here.
Okay, so anyone, yes, she's
We are
here.
only
Yes,
four
Hello.
people there.
go
Yeah,
ahead,
hi.
Pragya.
I was busy scribbling something because I found your discussion fascinating.
Okay.
Thank you.
um, I was struck by how visceral the poem is. You know, it's like it's such an intense feeling. Every line, every stanza, everywhere that I see, the pipe seems to behave like a snake. Just it's actually the poet's eyes which are which are tracing the pathway of the pipe, but it seems to take on a life of its own, and snaking through the walls and exploring the unexplored, the closed house. And then also the bus, like you pointed out in your point about synesthesia. uh, it's like it's behaving like a cat. It seems to eat a pilgrim when the pilgrim gets into the bus, and it gorges it out when the pilgrim is supposed to get down. And I think this poem celebrates the power of the body and imagination. It's such magic. Things turn into what they are, what they cannot be in real life. Uh, if you imagine them to be so, they take on a life of their own. And I loved your point about the betel nut chewing, how it is close to meditation, how it is close to some kind of chanting. It reminded me of a series in Amazon, on Amazon Prime, Bandish Bandits. I wonder if you guys have seen it. The mother, when she's, spoiler alert, but when the mother is trying to teach something to her son, she says that everything, our daily chores, they have a rhythm. And once you get into the rhythm, repetition has the power of just pulling you into a trance. It takes you, it transports you somewhere. It's an other body experience when you keep repeating things again and again and again. Think about Valmiki. There is that story, right? That he used to be a robber, and he kept on saying Mara, 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 and it turned into, I think, a chant, isn't it? And similarly, any kind of repetition, when it is done again and again and again, it's like the basis of Sufi poetry and music, right? When you keep listening to the repetition of Mola Mere, Mola Mere, Mola Mere, Mola Mere, and just by listening to it, you are lost somewhere else. You are taken out of your body. And I guess that's what this poet has done. By the mere act of turning the betel nut inside his mouth in a particular direction again and again and again, that also is elevated to the level of meditation. Something as mundane as chewing a betel nut. I mean, you cannot get more profane than that, right? Also, the same point applies to the pair of shorts. uh, like, had it been some other article of clothing, it would have been more acceptable. Maybe a pair of shorts should not be hanging on a piece of ancient history, a symbol of spirituality. But that is the point, right? That is the point which Anuradha was making about mm, God, you know postcard from God. Perhaps that pair of shorts, that faded, washed out pair of shorts, is a postcard from God, that don't enshrine me in lifeless stone. Respect life, because where life is, there I am. That's how you worship. When you respect one another, when you respect all forms of life. A pair of shorts might be something dirty, something dismissive for you, but for me, it's a covering for a man to, something with which a man covers himself. So like, the mundane is lifted to the level of divinity. I should not say lifted, actually there is no height difference here. The mundane is the divine, and the divine is ordinary. If you truly want to worship the divine, it has to become a part of your everyday life. It has to be treated as ordinary. You cannot keep God separate from the rest of the world. You cannot elevate spirituality and declare it sacrosanct and refuse to touch it in fear of uh, besmirching its purity. That's what I got from the poem, and
True,
I
that
loved
is
it, the
actually the
puppy.
essence of, the folk deity Khandoba,
Yes,
on
yes.
whom this whole concept of Jejuri
Hmm.
is created.
Yeah.
Yes, so
And also the characters that he takes in the poems, the Periha dogs,
Yeah.
the shorts. I mean, these are the very word Periha, untouchable,
Very,
unaccepted. People who are not. We have this history that some subcaste cannot enter into the temple,
hmm. If I
and
don't make a difference, why should you? God seems to be yelling.
yes, and no, his poems are actually a critique of the social practices going on at the point of time. in the name of worshipping gods and a sense of piety,
Yeah.
the way untouchability was prevalent in the
Hmm.
society.
Hmm.
That is why he deliberately took those kind of characters who were not accepted,
From
and
life.
he put them in the temple.
Yes. I loved how.
Finally,
Continue.
finally, when it is absolutely depeopled, it has been gifted to those who were not allowed there once.
Hmm.
And when we read the paradox, don't read them only as animals. Through that, he is putting the image of all those untouchable people who were not allowed. And Khandoba became their god, like Madam said that he's a Sudra god.
Hmm. The
So
moment everything broke down, the moment it became dilapidated, that temple, that was the very moment when it became safe.
safe,
It's
yes,
as if the ruin of the old order, the
Hmm.
yes,
popular order,
Because
is
yeah,
actually
had
the
it been
beginning of uh,
hmm,
of
you
of
know,
a of a new order.
yeah, a new order that accepts everyone.
Yes,
had it been
inclusive.
yeah, had it been completely clean and well maintained, the dogs wouldn't dare to enter it.
No, no,
They
no,
would
no, no.
feel unsafe.
Have you seen the temples? The dog are not allowed inside
They
the
are
temple.
chased away.
Yes,
Dirty dirt.
dirty. They are not allowed. So now that they are living there, it's in a way a starting of a new order. And he is through the ruins. He is giving us the history of Jejuri
Yeah. Th- Uh,
one by
Yes,
one.
in this, at this point, I'm just reminded of that very short poem, The Doorstep. If you're
The
talking about
yes,
doorstep.
yes,
Jejuri,
that I
Yes,
was
yes,
about to
yes.
mention
yes,
it.
that's
The
no
3-line poem.
doorstep. It's a pillar
Hmm.
on its side. Yes,
Hmm.
that's what it is.
That
Just
That's
these
what it is.
lines. I mean, the
that
power
seeking
in that
after
poem. Yeah.
that seeking after reassurance. Yes, that's what it is. You keep
Hmm, hmm,
repeating it to yourself when you're not yourself convinced. You
hmm,
seek
hmm,
conviction.
hmm,
Also,
And also the fact that once you break the accepted notions of religion and society, that
hmm,
becomes a doorstep into something new. You can only
yes,
enter a new world
doors.
once you break apart from the old world. Initially, I was unable to understand those two lines. I was like, how can a pillar turn into a doorstep? But
It's
once in a while, something opens up in my brain, and
it's a
it just
portal.
clicks that it is a, yeah, it is like a root that has to be created only after something else is destroyed.
Also, in that poem, The Priest, there is the comparison of the sunlight to the village barber. You know, Initially, you feel like it's an intrusion upon your personal space. Why is he touching me this way? Oh my God, why is he coming so close to me? Why do I feel his tummy poking into my shoulders? And then suddenly, with time, you get used to it. And similarly, the poet has gone and compared sunlight to it. Like initially, you might be bothered by this sunlight, especially where I live. And then you get used to it. The sun does not bother you anymore. You get used to it. Your skin gets used to it.
Actually, it was supposed to be a comfortable imagery for
Mm.
the priest,
Yes.
just like the
Yeah.
barber
Petting,
pats the cheeks
petting,
after
petting.
shaving.
But
Okay,
that's what I
to
got.
make it comfortable. In the same way, the sun was giving the priest comfort while
A
he was
pet.
waiting for the bus.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It's very interesting, the comparisons that are made in the poem and the imagery that is brought in. It's very interesting because I was also, struck by the expression lizard stare. So, what kind of a stare the
Stare,
Because
priest
the
the
priest
must
lizard
had.
is
have had?
waiting for the insect to make a move
It's
and
come.
it'll pounce.
And the one when you said that in the end a cat green on its face and a live ready to eat pilgrim held between its teeth. It's not, he's not actually referring to the bus. Through the bus he's referring to the priest.
Yeah, that's the point
That's
with
the, that's
which
the that's why the comparison with the lizard, that the priest is as if he is waiting for its prey to come.
Pounce upon
Now
her.
that he had gotten to the bus and he will reach Jejuri,
Mm.
there he will have its prey.
Yeah.
I remember reading once a very interesting thing about the Nandi statue that you see in any Shiva temple. So someone had written a very interesting thing that do not confuse the supine position of the Nandi with laziness. Nandi is always in a position of appraisal of the situation and full of active energy that is ready to work in the favor of the Lord if the Lord ever requires it. Whatever the Lord demands, Nandi is waiting because it is sitting on the haunches, right? So the lizard analogy also struck me something like that. Like Pragya was saying, it is not simply a dull moment, a moment of distraction. It is a moment full of alertness. There is a desire and a focus on the end result. So lizards
Just
are
before the
never
act.
dull. Huh.
Just
Lizards are
before the
never
act.
dull. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just before the act. And I really find it interesting that the priest tries to control the situation, which is actually out of his control through his perception. Like we all want to feel like we are in control of something, but he cannot control the bus. The bus will come in its own time. He feels like maybe if I say a mantra in a particular way using my betel nut, maybe if I focus in a particular way, and then I can control my world around me. So there is the desire in all human beings, right? That I can make some sense out of what is happening in my system, in my society. That is why we turn to religion after a point.
No, actually, in the point, the priest, you are correct to make that uh, what should I do, interpretation, but the poem is actually it is not written from the perspective of the poet, the priest. Someone, an onlooker who is looking at the priest,
We're seeing the
he
priest.
thinks,
We're seeing the
yes,
priest.
he thinks that the priest who is chewing the betel and waiting for the bus, he is thinking that the chewing of betel is like a mantra, is a mantra, is
Uh-huh.
not like, is a mantra, and it
Uh-huh.
works. So he is being very sarcastic about the power that the priest shows, that we are so
It's the
powerful. See,
opposite actually.
we're so close to God
Hmm.
that now that I'm waiting, the bus will come. They boast.
Hmm.
That is what he is talking about. It works. That very word, it works. Is
So
very
it's
sarcastic when
sarcastic.
he says.
It's basically
Yes.
sarcasm.
The whole of the
Entire
Jejuri
poem
is
is
irony and
sarcasm.
sarcasm.
No, it's
Entire
interesting
poem.
actually the way Anita, brought in this
The
discussion
onlooker.
of Nandi, because the way Nandi is usually positioned, the poem begins in that way. Okay. An offering of heel and haunch on the cold
Hmm.
altar of the colored
Exactly.
wall. The
Exactly.
priest
The
waits.
Nandi analogy comes to the mind with the positioning of the
Yes. I
priest
mean,
himself.
the we can say the structure is like a temple, and the priest has the appearance of a bhakta, like Nandi. But then
Huh.
we have to see through that. We have to
Mhm.
just understand, like Dr. Anuradha said in the first poem, The Bus, what is going on inside the man's head, that the pilgrim will never know. Okay, that journey the pilgrim cannot make. He can only see the outer caste mark that
Mhm.
the person had on his forehead.
External
The
markings.
same way, we
Nothing
see
else.
an externality about the priest, because that externality is required. Otherwise, how can he maintain his status as a priest? How can he catch his prey? So the externality is very important, and that is why this resemblance with Nandi, as you rightly pointed out, because those are the words he uses, heel and haunch, and that is what we find in the figure of Nandi also. But
Nandi.
then that is the point where, the reality departs from what we see outwardly.
Perception and reality.
Yeah.
Perception is the traditional way of worshipping and looking at gods and goddesses, and the reality is otherwise, what we do not see.
So it's very interesting to have this discussion, and I'm sure, in the next sessions also we will have uh, interesting things to say about these poems, because I'm sure just as we will close this session and we will go about, our chores, the rest of the chores that are there for this day to end. Still, these words will be in our minds, and
These
these
are going to
words will
stay
be,
with us.
yeah, these things will be there in the back of our minds. And
And
before, we just uh, take a pause. I say pause because we are going to
uh,
continue. Yeah, yes, please.
does
Go
does
ahead.
anyone was reminded of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock when we were talking about the cat grinning?
Cat.
Anyone
The
remember
cat.
that stanza of the yellow smoke rubbing its skin?
Right.
The,
Fog,
the cat.
Yellow
smog, the
smoke
smog
reminds
that
me of turmeric now. After reading the poems, yellow smoke only reminds me of turmeric. Because you
Everything
see,
yellow is turmeric.
yeah, because I talked about Vagya and Murli. I want to just read these two poems for you. Maybe we can end here and we can all think about these poems and come back for discussion after some days. But I would like to read these poems. One is a song for a Vagya and the other is a song for a Murli. A song for a Vagya. It tore in two when I took this yellow scarf from the sun. I know it's only a half, but I'll throw it away when I have found a better one. I killed my mother for her skin. I must say, it didn't take much to make this pouch I keep turmeric in. It is my job to carry this can of oil, yours to see it's always full. But if I can't beg, I'll have to steal. Is that a deal? Khandoba's temple rises with the day, but it must not fall with the night. I'll hold it up with a flame for a prop. Don't turn me away. I must have my oil, ma'am. Give me a drop if you can't spare a gram. This instrument has one string and one god-awful itch. As I scratch it, it gives me just one pitch. But if it plays just the one note, who am I to complain when all I've got is just a one-word song inside my throat? God is the word, and I know it backwards. I know it as fangs inside my flanks, but I also know it as a lamb between my teeth, as a taste of blood upon my tongue. And this is the only song I have always sung. That is a song for a Vagya.
Okay.
Now, a song for a Murli. Look, the moon has come down to graze along the hilltop. You dare not ride off with it. Don't you see Khandoba's brand on its flank, you horse thief? Look, that's his name, tattooed just below the left collarbone. Keep your hands off Khandoba's woman, you old lecher. Let's see the color of your money first. These are the two poems, one
I
for
think
Akya and the other for a Murli.
I think we will begin the next session with these two poems. They have so much to tell. I think the very concept of when you were reading these poems before also, the concept of Devdasi came to my mind. And the concept of Devdasi is not only prevalent in Odia culture but also in South Indian culture, and their plight, which is also in the poem. So I think in the next session we will talk about this, and it was a very nice session. I just want to show you whether you have seen or not. This is the man we are talking about. Yeah. And the interesting thing about my book is that it starts from this side. When it came, it was like the beginning is from the back. So I have begun the poems from back. Yeah. From here. Yours also? No, my starts here. It is the beginning of the book from the back.
Shatrapa has a traditional book, I believe.
Yes, I have a reversed one.
Okay. All right. No, my book is
Yeah.
just, it begins at the beginning, but then it is
Beginning.
very
Mine
interesting the
begins at
way
the
you
end.
got, this book. That means, you can turn your perceptions around. It is a hint that,
Yeah.
you just have to uh, turn your perceptions on their head when you
Perception
are
and look
reading.
at it in a different
Yeah.
way. Yes. Yes. That's
So
what
it also sent a message for you
it
along
did
with the
when it
words of
came.
Arun.
Truly. Yeah.
Yes, actually, thank you, Anuradha ma'am, for suggesting that we take up this text, because I've really enjoyed, reading the poems. And I feel that whenever you feel the urge to go away from a crowd and read poetry, whenever you have that urge of staying with poetry or being alone with a poem because you feel comfortable in it, or there is something in it which which makes you just sit down and think. I think these poems have that ability.
These are the poems. Yes, they're not like this contemporary poems appealing. I mean, you just read words, very difficult words, and not making any sense. Whereas you read Kolatkar, they make very good sense, and they make you think.
True. Because
They are
it was
like,
very interesting, the poem that Pragya brought in about the conduit pipe. I mean, that is such an
Yes,
interesting poem, the
they're
way.
like
poem. Yes,
hotkeys. They pull you in. You feel like the bystander. You're right next to the bystander, and he's pointing out his point of view to you.
and you're looking at it.
Yeah.
True, because you see,
Thank you.
after
Seriously,
a long description of
suggesting this
how the
one.
pipe travels, we are made to look at the pipe, maybe the head of the pipe, which is like a mouse
The
with a broken neck. And
bronze
then
mouse.
the pipe is interested in, the other object which is lying beneath it. What is it? A mill, I think.
Yeah, millstone.
Which,
Yes, yes.
what's the story behind that mill? How did it
Empty
end up
pipe.
here?
Yeah, the dry pipe.
Neglected and unused. So it's very interesting, these poems. And yes, of course, we will continue talking about these two poems that I read out, the song for Vakya and the song for Murli. We will begin with those poems and we will continue with other poems. Thank you, Anuradha
Thank
ma'am,
you.
and Pragya and Anita. I call them Pragya and Anita because
Thank you,
names,
Shatarupa.
and I cannot add ma'am with their names. So
You shouldn't. I don't believe you should do it to Anuradha as well. Like, we're friends.
yeah, because I
Yes.
have been introduced to her not when we were students, but now when we are teachers. So I have that
These are,
inclination
I
to call
have
her ma'am.
very, I mean, strange meetings with each of you. All of a sudden, I was transferred to Dhenkanal. Then I met Anita madam. Then I went to Sambalpur University for an orientation course, and I met Pragya madam. Then one
Pragya
day Anita
madam.
madam texted. Yes, I call
She
her
kept me
madam.
at Anita Madam level all the time, so it's not something of.
I cannot help it. So, and then one day I was told that, do you want to be a part of a group? Satarupa has married. I said, okay. Then one more madam added. So it is always going
Maddening
to be like
madams.
that.
So thank you all the madams for this interesting discussion. And I think we should bid each other good night.